Before we begin, if you enjoy intense sci-fi stories where humanity refuses to be prey, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments how you think this story will end, because what happens on this mountain will change everything. The first warning didn't come from orbit or sensors or automated defenses. It came from the way the night went quiet. Elias Vorn noticed it while standing on the colony's outer ridge, watching the pale blue crops sway under twin moons. The insects stopped chirring. The wind thinned. Even the power hum from the solar towers seemed to soften, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Elias rested a hand on the railing and felt a familiar tightening in his chest, the kind that hadn't left him since he stopped being a scout and started pretending life could ever be simple again. The colony of Harrogate had been built fast and light, as human settlements so often were. Modular habitats, shield pylons, emergency bunkers carved into black stone. 2,000 people, most of them families, engineers, farmers, and traders, living on a world the rest of the galaxy considered too unstable to bother with. Officially, Elias was the colony's logistics coordinator. In practice, he was the man people looked for when alarms sounded or uncertainty crept in. He had the posture of someone who expected trouble and the eyes of someone who had already seen worse. The first explosion bloomed at the atmospheric relay. Light split the sky, bright and violent, and the shockwave punched through the colony like a hammer. Elias was already moving, hands slapping the alert panel before the sirens could finish their startup cycle. Red lights flooded the settlement. Somewhere a child screamed. Somewhere else glass shattered. Elias's voice cut cleanly through the comm system, calm and steady in a way that had nothing to do with bravery and everything to do with hard-earned discipline. All units, this is Vorn. We're under hostile incursion. Repeat, hostile incursion. Initiate evacuation protocol Theta. Lock civilian shelters and fall back in groups. High above, shapes detached from nothing and became everything. Assassin pods burned through the clouds without signatures, without warnings, without mercy. They descended with obscene precision, opening like dark metallic flowers as figures dropped toward the colony's core. The galaxy called them Kuruk Vale Reavers, feared killers employed by crime syndicates and political houses alike, specialists in erasure. They didn't conquer worlds. They removed them. Defense turrets spun up and died seconds later. Comms towers folded under pinpoint strikes. The colony's meager orbital defenses never even fired. Elias watched as the settlement center ignited, fire climbing into the sky, and knew with cold certainty that this was no raid for plunder. This was a clean kill. "Why?" muttered Mara Chin over the local channel, her voice tight as she shepherded a group of engineers toward the bunkers. "We don't have anything worth." "They're not here for resources," Elias replied, already running. "They're here to make sure no one remembers us." The first Reavers hit the ground silently, blades flashing, weapons humming with energies Elias had only seen once before, on a border world that no longer existed. Colonists scattered. Some fired back with hunting rifles and industrial cutters. It bought seconds. Not more. Elias reached the command nexus just as a Reaver tore through the door. The alien was tall and skeletal, armor absorbing light, visor reflecting Elias's own face back at him. The thing hesitated just long enough. Elias fired once, point blank, and kept running without looking back. He didn't wait to confirm the kill. That was a luxury meant for people who survived their first mistakes. "Fall back to Route Stone," he ordered, voice sharp. "Do not engage unless necessary. Move." Route Stone led away from the colony, past the outer shelters, toward the rising black mass that loomed over Harrogate like a sleeping giant. The mountain. Its slopes were jagged and ancient, veins of unknown minerals running like scars beneath the surface. Every survey drone sent too close had failed. Every attempt to mine it had been quietly abandoned. The locals didn't hike there. The animals didn't cross it. The Reavers did. Elias guided knot after knot of fleeing colonists through narrow passes, using old service tunnels and shielded ravines most people forgot existed. The assassins followed, methodical and relentless, cutting down stragglers, adapting to every ambush almost instantly. This wasn't a battle. It was a narrowing corridor with an end Elias alone seemed willing to acknowledge. By the time they reached the foothills, the colony behind them burned. Night glowed orange. Elias took a head count with shaking hands kept steady through sheer force of will. Too many missing. Too many gone already. "We can't outrun them," Mara said softly. Dirt streaked her face. Her hands trembled. "I know," Elias replied. He turned toward the mountain, its vast silhouette blotting out the stars. The air here felt heavier, charged, like the moments before a storm that never quite broke. Somewhere deep within the rock, something shifted, just enough for Elias to feel it through the soles of his boots. The reavers crested the ridge behind them, weapons raised, confident again now that their prey was cornered. One of them emitted a sharp tonal signal, a sound that scraped across human nerves like broken glass. Elias ignored it. He unclipped an old transmitter from his belt, scarred and outdated, its surface etched with symbols no one else in the colony knew the meaning of. His fingers lingered over the activation switch, not in doubt, but in something closer to respect. This was always the risk, he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. Mara stared at him. Elias, what did we build this place next to? The mountain answered first. Far beneath the stone, a sound rolled outward, not a roar, not yet, but a call so deep and vast it bent the air itself. The ground shuddered. Loose gravel danced. The reavers halted, their perfect formation breaking as sensors flared useless warnings across their displays. Elias finally looked back at them, his expression grim, unapologetic, and fiercely human. We built it next to family, he said, and triggered the signal again. Somewhere within the mountain, something ancient heard its name spoken by a human voice, and woke. The reavers had never retreated from prey. That certainty anchored Commander Xwararka as he watched the humans scatter into the mountain's shadow. From his elevated position on a shard of broken stone, he catalogued motion and thermal signatures with practiced detachment. Panic radiated from the fleeing colonists. Fear slowed them. Fear always did. The humans' sudden turn toward the mountain was irrelevant. Terrain choices did not change outcomes when execution was already in progress. Xwararka opened a private command channel, his voice a controlled rasp shaped by translators and discipline. Sweep pattern continues. Cull efficiently. Do not pursue strays beyond visibility thresholds. Acknowledgements flickered across his ocular feed. Every unit under his command had executed dozens of exterminations like this one. Frontier colonies vanished all the time, erased before interstellar councils could convene or syndicate rivals could protest jurisdiction. Humans, persistent and irritating as they were, remained mortal. Their supposed adaptability did not concern him. Yet the mountain troubled him. Its mass interfered with long-range scans, distorting gravimetric readings into meaningless noise. Biosignature sweeps returned inconsistent results. Echoes too large to classify, then nothing at all. Xwararka adjusted sensor calibration manually, an action he had not performed in years. When the readouts failed again, he felt the first flicker of irritation. Not fear. Irritation implied solvable error. Advance, he ordered. The reavers pushed forward, moving like a single organism, armor shifting texture to match the stone. Their footfalls were mathematically spaced, their weapons locked into ready positions designed to eliminate resistance before it could organize. They cut down a group of humans who lagged behind, ending their running with swift, efficient strikes. Xwararka observed without emotion, already reallocating units to intercept alternate escape vectors. Then one of his scouts vanished. There was no explosion, no thermal spike, no distress signal. The unit's presence simply ceased, wiped from his command display as if it had never existed. Xwararka paused, reviewing the data stream. A malfunction, perhaps. He dispatched another pair to the same coordinates. Their feeds persisted for 8 seconds longer, long enough to register violent motion and a pressure wave that shattered internal stabilizers. Then silence again. Xwararka's irritation sharpened into something colder. He redirected a drone, its sensors immune to most forms of interference, and sent it gliding low across the ravine. The drone's visual feed jittered, resolving shadow and stone in fragmentary flashes. Something large moved beneath the rock, not tunneling exactly, but displacing the substrate as though the mountain itself were accommodating its passage. Impossible, Xwararka thought. No biological structure could generate that level of compression without self-destruction. The sound came next. It vibrated through the armor of every reaver in range, a subsonic pulse that rattled articulation points and set internal alarms cascading. The reavers faltered, formations fracturing as balance algorithms struggled to adapt. Xwararka felt it reverberate through his own exoskeletal frame, the sensation invasive and deeply unwelcome. This was not a weapon. It lacked the precision of designed harm. It was communication. Report, he snapped over the channel. Static answered him, thick and pulsing, threaded with a low-frequency resonance that drowned out standardized signals. The mountain loomed closer now, its surface rippling in subtle ways that defied simple explanation. Xwararka reclassified the structure from terrain to potential hazard, then immediately recognized the inadequacy of the term. Something else was happening. A human signal cut through the interference briefly, weak but unmistakable. A repeating burst pattern, old, inefficient, and deliberate. XYRK flagged it, isolating the transmission. It wasn't a distress call. It wasn't broadcasting for help. It matched no known human military code in the Empire's archives. It sounded like a summons. The notion struck him as absurd. No species summoned predators into their own territory. Predators arrived uninvited and were either subdued or avoided. That was a universal constant. Civilizations survived by mastering their monsters or sealing them away. Another reaver disappeared. This time, the ground split where it had stood, stone heaving upward in a silent convulsion. Dust filled the air, blotting out visual feeds. When the sensors cleared, there was nothing left of the unit. Not fragments, not residue, not the residue patterns consistent with high-energy disassembly. Just an absence shaped like violence. Fear entered XYRK's calculations then, not as an emotion, but as a variable that could no longer be dismissed. He rerouted power to long-range transmitters, attempting to alert extraction craft still cloaked above the atmosphere. The signal failed to clear the mountain's interference field. For the first time since his initiation into the Veil, XYRK considered aborting a mission not because of resistance, but because of uncertainty. He advanced anyway. The humans clustered at the base of a sheer stone face, their movements slowing despite the urgency of pursuit. XYRK observed the tall male among them, the one issuing orders, the one who did not look back while others panicked. That individual held a device, his posture neither defensive nor desperate, but deliberate. The human activated it again, and this time the mountain answered more fully. The sound deepened, resolving into layers, harmonics folding over one another in a way that defied mechanical reproduction. It carried weight, presence, and intention. Even XYRK's combat-hardened nervous system reacted, reflexes tightening, claws flexing against his will. Data flooded his feed, most of it incoherent. Bioreadings spiked off-scale, then stabilized at levels that should have crushed organic matter into slurry. Thermal signatures bloomed along the mountain's interior, not as heat, but as friction against something moving with impossible restraint. The reavers hesitated. That moment of hesitation cost them. The stone to XYRK's left collapsed inward, not falling, but being pulled aside as something immense passed through it. A shape emerged in fragments, ridged armor, massive limbs, eyes like embers buried deep within shadow. It did not roar in triumph or rage. It simply arrived, and the mountain seemed to quiet around it as if yielding. XYRK's threat analysis collapsed into a single brutal truth. This was not a wild predator. This was a territorial entity. And the humans had called it. As the creature's gaze shifted toward the reavers, fixing on them with ancient, evaluating intelligence, XYRK realized the error was not tactical or strategic. It was existential. The mission objective updated itself in his mind, unbidden and terrifyingly clear. Survival was no longer guaranteed, and the hunt had quietly, irrevocably reversed. The humans did not cheer when the mountain opened. They stood frozen at its base, breath shallow, eyes fixed on the vast shape resolving from shadow and stone. Elias felt the weight of it press down on his senses like deep water, old fear mixing with something far heavier than awe. He lowered the transmitter but did not step back. He never did. The creature noticed that immediately. Its body emerged in deliberate segments, each movement economical despite its impossible scale. Plates of obsidian-colored armor overlapped along its flanks, etched with scars that no human hand could have made. Limbs as thick as transport columns locked into place against the rock, claws biting stone as if anchoring itself to the world. Most disturbing were its eyes, huge, ember-bright, carrying the focused clarity of a mind that had known civilizations rise, threaten, and vanish. The reavers reacted too late. The first bolt fired struck the creature's chest and dissipated against its armor, energy bleeding harmlessly into the etched grooves like rain into channels. The second never reached its target. The predator moved. It was not a charge. It was a correction, a sudden rearrangement of reality around moving mass. Stone shattered outward in a controlled arc as the creature crossed the distance between it and the nearest reaver, jaws closing once. There was no scream. No debris worth identifying. One moment the assassin existed, the next it did not. XYRK issued retreat commands, channels overlapping, signals fracturing under interference. His units scattered, breaking formation for the first time, their famed precision dissolving into instinct-driven evasion. The predator adjusted, cutting off paths, forcing them uphill, deeper into the mountain's domain. It did not hunt with fury. It hunted with judgment. Elias exhaled slowly and raised his hand, fingers curling in a gesture few humans ever saw him make. The predator's head tilted a fraction, massive eyes flicking back toward him. For an instant, the world narrowed to that exchange. "Hold position," Elias said quietly to the colonists behind him. His voice carried no panic now, only resolve. "Do not run. Not unless I tell you." Mara stared at him, disbelief warring with trust. "It's listening to you," she whispered. "It agreed to," Elias replied. Saying more would help no one. Another reaver leapt from cover, aiming straight for the human cluster, perhaps reasoning that the predator would not strike so close to what the humans were protecting. The logic was sound. It was also incomplete. The predator's tail lashed out with blinding speed, catching the assassin midair and slamming it into the rock face hard enough to ripple the stone. It left the body pinned there, twitching once before going still. Then it looked back to the reaver's commander. Exwaraka felt the stare land like physical weight. Every survival instinct honed across centuries screamed at him to flee, but training and pride held him in place. He activated external speakers, forcing his voice through the chaos and into the open air. "This territory is marked," he declared, words translated into deep, resonant tones. "State your claim, entity. We will withdraw." The predator did not answer him. It stepped closer instead, its bulk blocking starlight, heat radiating off its armor in slow, measured waves. The mountain groaned with each step, stone flexing rather than breaking, as if the world itself recognized authority. Exwaraka realized, too late, that the creature's restraint had never been for the reaver's sake. It was for the humans. Elias approached until he stood at the edge of the creature's shadow. He keyed the transmitter one final time, not broadcasting, but opening a private channel keyed to frequencies no galactic device officially recorded. The predator lowered its head by inches, enough to bring one blazing eye level with him. "They broke the boundary," Elias said, his voice low but unflinching. "They came for the colony." The predator's response was not language. It was intent made audible, a resonant vibration that rolled outward and settled into the bones of the mountain. The reaver's sensors spiked again, alarms blaring as the sound pattern locked into local space, oscillating with terrible purpose. Exwaraka's battle display went dark. The predator moved. It advanced in a controlled sweep, herding the remaining reavers into a narrowing corridor of stone. Those who tried to scale the rock found handholds collapsing beneath claws they never saw coming. Those who turned their weapons on the humans were intercepted with brutal efficiency. Elias gave no more orders. He didn't need to. This phase of the conflict no longer required human direction. Minutes passed like heartbeats. When it ended, the mountain was quiet again, dust settling slowly through cold air. What remained of the reavers lay scattered in shapes that no longer resembled living forms. Exwaraka alone still breathed, armor cracked, limbs failing as internal systems shut down one by one. The predator loomed over him, eyes burning not with anger but with assessment. Exwaraka looked past it, up at the human who had not flinched, not once. Understanding finally took shape in his shattered mind. "You did not bind it," he rasped. "You convinced it." Elias met his gaze without triumph. "We asked it to stay," he said. "That's different." The predator released a single thunderous exhalation and looked back toward the mountain's heights, as if sensing distant movement yet to come. Elias felt the vibration carry through the stone beneath his boots, not as a warning to him, but as a promise to whatever else might be watching. This wasn't over. The galaxy would hear what answered a human call, and eventually someone would come to test it. Silence settled over the mountain like a held breath. Elias did not mistake it for peace. He watched the predator's posture, the subtle tension held in its massive frame, the way its gaze lingered on the broken slope beyond the fallen reavers. It was listening not for enemies but for echoes, for intentions carried through space and stone. Whatever it heard, it did not move away. The remaining colonists edged forward cautiously, shock muting their voices. Mara joined Elias at the front, her eyes never leaving the creature. "Is it finished?" she asked. "For now," Elias replied. He kept his hand near the transmitter, fingers resting lightly against its worn casing. Trust did not mean complacency. Not between equals. Behind them, Exwaraka struggled against failing armor, his breaths shallow, each one rasping louder than the last. Survival had shrunk his universe to a single certainty. He was alive only because the predator allowed it. When the creature finally turned its full attention back to him, relief and terror tangled beyond reason. The predator did not strike. Instead, it circled slowly, each step deliberate, as if confirming that no threat remained worth immediate destruction. Its tail dragged shallow furrows into stone, a physical demarcation of claim. The mountain responded, low vibrations rolling outward, carrying the mark far beyond sight. Xwaraka understood then what the humans had accomplished. They had not just found a guardian. They had negotiated a border with something older than law. "You will be hunted for this," Xwaraka warned, forcing the words through fractured translators. "They will send fleets. They will send gods." Elias looked down at him, considering. "They already sent assassins." The predator paused, head turning slightly as if parsing the exchange. Elias raised his voice just enough for it to hear. "No further pursuit," he said. "The survivors are retreating." The creature regarded him in silence. Time stretched. Then it inclined its head, slow and unmistakable, and released a sound that resonated somewhere between assent and warning. It stepped back from Xwaraka, leaving him broken but breathing. Mara exhaled shakily. "You could have let it finish them." "Yes," Elias said. But then the message wouldn't spread as cleanly. Understanding dawned across her face, followed by a flicker of grim approval. The predator's presence was already rippling outward, every sensor, every listening post that still functioned recording impossible data. Survival of a witness was deliberate, not merciful. Extraction craft decloaked above the cloud layer moments later, their engines thrumming with restraint rather than confidence. They did not descend. They hovered, uncertain, keeping just far enough away to remain outside the mountain's influence. Elias felt the distant pressure of targeting systems lock briefly onto the predator, then disengage. The mountain spoke again. This time the sound was not a roar but a resonant pulse that surged outward, shaking loose stones along the higher ridges and flooding the airwaves with static. The extraction craft veered back, engines flaring as they retreated into orbit, taking their surviving commander with them. There would be no second attempt. Not tonight. Only then did the predator relax. The massive bulk lowered into a crouch, armor plates shifting as internal heat vented into the open air. Its eyes dimmed slightly, intelligence still present but no longer focused outward. The immediate threat had passed. The boundary held. Elias stepped closer, close enough to feel warmth radiating through his boots. He did not touch the creature. He never had. Some lines mattered even between allies. "They'll talk," Mara said, watching the retreating lights in the sky. "About us. About it." "They already are," Elias replied. The predator began its return toward the mountain, each movement unhurried, stone parting to accommodate its passage. Before it vanished entirely, it paused and glanced back at the humans once more. Not watchful. Not wary. Acknowledging. Then it was gone, swallowed by stone that sealed behind it as though nothing had ever emerged. The night grew cold. Medical teams moved among the survivors, tending injuries, counting losses. Elias stood apart, eyes on the mountainside. He could still feel the residual vibrations humming through the rock, a reminder that what slept there had merely agreed to rest, not to withdraw. Mara joined him again, her voice quieter now. "What happens when they come back? When they bring more?" Elias glanced up at the vast silhouette looming against the stars. "Then we call again." Above them, far beyond sight, data was already being compiled, analyzed, translated, and whispered through channels that reached the deepest corners of galactic power. The footage would circulate. The sounds would be studied. The survival of one assassin would become a fulcrum upon which decisions turned. The galaxy would debate what it had seen. And somewhere in that debate, fear would quietly take root, not of the mountain alone, but of the humans who stood at its base and spoke to it as if it were kin. Elias closed his eyes briefly, letting the cool air fill his lungs. This victory had boundaries just like the mountain. The future would test them. And when it did, the call would not go unanswered. The dawn was brittle and gray, filtering through the jagged peaks like the faint promise of survival. Elias stood at the edge of the ruined plateau, shoulders tense but unbowed. Around him, the colonists emerged from shadowed shelters, faces streaked with ash and sweat, their eyes wide with the mixture of relief and disbelief that only those who had stared death in the face could understand. Mara moved beside him, her hand brushing his shoulder as if grounding herself to something solid, something human. Elias did not speak at first. He watched the mountain in silence, its massive silhouette swallowing the first hints of sunlight. Somewhere deep within, the predator still stirred, its presence a distant vibration in the stone beneath his boots. He could feel it there, a living heartbeat of power that had chosen humans over all others, a bond forged in mutual respect and instinct. For Elias, it was more than survival, It was proof that humanity's courage, its capacity to act decisively in the face of annihilation, had weight beyond reckoning. "Do you think it will come back?" Mara asked, her voice quiet but steady. Elias considered her question carefully. "Not for us," he said. "Not unless we call it. But the galaxy, they'll hear what answered." Reports trickled in from the far reaches of the colony, survivors recounting the impossible carnage. Every word carried weight, yet Elias noticed something in the way they spoke, not just fear but awe. Respect. Something deeper, almost reverential, for the force that had acted at their command. This was no mere predator. It was a living testament to the principle humans rarely recognized in themselves, that courage could summon forces beyond imagination. High above, a faint shimmer betrayed the approach of surveillance drones, dispatched too late to prevent disaster but early enough to capture it in detail. The imagery would travel across systems, reach every council, every syndicate, every entity who had underestimated humanity's tenacity. Elias did not need to fear what would follow. The message was already clear. Humanity was not prey. Humanity did not bargain. Humanity commanded. Exwaraka, the lone surviving Reaver, had been found at the base of the northern ridge, battered and broken, yet alive. Elias had let him live, and now he observed the defeated alien, strapped into medical restraints, his pride stripped bare. Exwaraka's gaze met Elias's, recognition of something unspoken passing between them. This was not mercy as weakness, it was mercy as power. Humanity could survive. Humanity could decide which lives mattered. And Elias was its instrument in this moment. Mara exhaled, a breath that carried both exhaustion and relief. "They'll never forget this," she said. "No," Elias agreed. "And that's exactly why we have to be careful. They'll test again." He glanced toward the distant horizon where the mountains met the sky, where shadows still held the promise of secrets and the weight of history. But whatever they bring next, they'll find something waiting. The predator shifted within the mountain, responding to the faint, almost imperceptible hum of Elias's presence. It was a pact, silent yet absolute. No command was needed beyond the recognition of trust. Humans had not subdued it. They had earned it. And in that quiet acknowledgement, the colony's survivors found more than protection. They found validation, a reassurance that their efforts, their sacrifices, had meaning that stretched beyond the immediate horizon. As the sun rose fully, casting long fingers of light over broken terrain, Elias called the colonists together. They formed a circle, ragged but determined. Each face told a story of survival, of fear confronted, and of courage tested. In the center, Elias held the transmitter once more, scarred and ancient, yet still capable of bridging worlds. He did not speak into it. He only held it, a symbol of connection, authority, and command. A hum responded, deep and resonant, vibrating through the soles of boots and the veins of rock alike. The predator had acknowledged him again, closer this time, unseen yet felt in the subtle tremors of the ground. Elias let the vibration settle. It was not a warning. It was a declaration. Humans had allies that the galaxy did not understand. Allies that obeyed no law but the one forged in respect and intent. Mara placed her hand over his, her grip firm. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked, voice almost lost in the stirring winds. Elias looked to the mountain, to the shadow that no longer threatened but loomed as a promise. "Regret what? That we survived? That we showed them what humans are capable of?" He shook his head slowly. "No. The galaxy will remember. They'll know fear, not of us but of what answers our call." From the ridges above, distant clouds shifted and broke, revealing a horizon alight with possibility. Birds native to the planet, once quiet, now filled the sky, responding to a world no longer silent with terror. The colonists watched, and for a brief moment the mountain's weight seemed less oppressive. Its presence was still formidable, still ancient, but now it carried reassurance as well as awe. Elias's eyes swept the faces of the survivors. Each one bore marks of battle but also resilience. Each had acted, chosen courage over surrender, and that choice had called forth a force greater than any human or alien adversary. In that recognition, Elias understood what the predator had always known: humanity could not be underestimated. Not for fear, not for technology, not for legend. The distant stars shimmered, but Elias's attention remained on the mountain, on the life within, on the path forward. This was more than survival. It was a beginning. The galaxy would learn from this day, but the humans at Harrogate would not wait for permission. They would shape the narrative, their courage echoing across worlds, their bond with the ancient predator a living testament to what could be achieved when intelligence, instinct and intent converged. Elias stepped forward, leading the survivors toward the safety of renewed shelters, toward rebuilding, toward the unknown that no longer held terror for them. Mara followed, steady and resolute. Behind them, the mountain stood watch, silent yet alive, its presence a reminder of the force that answered to humanity. And in the heart of the rock, the predator waited, patient, vigilant, and bound by respect rather than chains. It had chosen humanity. The galaxy would know. The first shuttle lifted off, its engines a quiet promise of communication to far-off worlds. The message had been set. The image of the predator answering a human call would ripple across systems. Everywhere, intelligence agencies, syndicates, and explorers would pause, reconsider, and fear. Not fear of humans alone, but of the force that humans had awakened. Elias turned to Mara and for the first time in hours, allowed himself a smile. "They'll think twice next time." "They'll think twice," she echoed. And somewhere deep in the mountain, the predator's eyes burned faintly, a silent guardian of humanity's audacity. The world had changed. The galaxy would remember. Elias took a deep breath and began walking, leading his people into the dawn, into survival, into legend. The mountain's shadow stretched behind them, immense and eternal, and the predator's call had already reshaped the fate of worlds.